Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know I love digging into the latest paleontology research, and you guys send over some seriously cool stuff this time.
Well, we've got a lot to cover, from dinosaur kings to the very first vertebrates, even a look at why pandas are so obsessed with bamboo.
Okay, so let's jump right in. First up, we've got this newly discovered dinosaur, Meraxes gigas.
Ah, yes. Meraxes gigas. Quite a find.
I mean, the name itself sounds epic, like straight out of Game of Thrones.
Blah.
And it was massive, right? Somewhere between 3 and 5 tons.
Oh, yeah, definitely a big one. But the size isn't the most remarkable thing about this discovery.
Really? What is it then?
The specimen they found, it was old. Like really old for a dinosaur. We're talking somewhere between 39 and 53 years old.
Wow, a dinosaur senior citizen. That's pretty incredible when you think about what we usually imagine for their lifespans.
Yeah.
Does this change how we think about dinosaur aging?
It definitely challenges some assumptions. Suggests Meraxes gigas may have had a much longer growth period than its relatives, possibly at a more consistent rate. And the fossil itself is amazingly well preserved, especially at forelimbs.
Oh yeah, I read about those arms.
Yeah.
Tiny little things for such a huge dinosaur. Kind of funny to picture, actually. So what's the deal with those short arms? Were they just for show, or did they actually serve some purpose?
It's a question that has puzzled paleontologists for a while. You see, Meraxes gigas belongs to the Carcharodontosaurids, a group of dinosaurs known for their powerful heads and jaws.
Okay, yeah, like T-Rex.
Exactly. And like T-Rex, Carcharodontosaurids, along with other groups like apatosaurs, show this trend of forelimb reduction. It seems they prioritized head and jaw power for hunting, which would make those arms less crucial for their survival.
So all about that bite. And speaking of bites, Meraxes gigas had a pretty impressive skull too, right? I read something like 127 centimeters long, even bigger than Pteranodontan.
That's right. And it's not just the size, it's also the unique wrinkles and ridges on the skull. Really sets it apart from other Carcharodontosaurids.
So it seems like Meraxes gigas is giving us a lot of new information about this group of dinosaurs, filling in some evolutionary gaps.
Absolutely, and reinforcing their role as top predators in the early late Cretaceous, before the mass extinction event.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, well, let's shift gears now and go way back in time, even further than the dinosaurs, to the very origins of vertebrates. What can you tell me about Unanazoon? I hear it's causing quite a stir in the world of paleontology.
Unanazoon has been a bit of a mystery for us, a 518-million-year-old creature from the Cambrian period, and its classification has been debated for decades.
So what's the debate? What makes Unanazoon so special?
Well, traditional morphology studies looking at its physical form haven't given us a clear answer, but some Chinese scientists recently used some really advanced technology to examine Unanazoon at a microscopic level.
Okay, and what did they find?
They focused on a structure called the pharyngeal arches, which are skeletal elements around the digestive tract. And in Unanazoon's pharynx, they observed stacked plate-like cells and structures called fibrillin microfibrils.
Okay, I'm going to be honest. Some of this is going over my head. What's the significance of these findings?
These features, they're unique to the cellular cartilage you find in vertebrates. It's like a microscopic fingerprint, confirming Unanazoon as a very early vertebrate.
Whoa. So we're talking about a potential ancestor to all creatures with spines, everything from fish to dinosaurs to us. That's mind-blowing. So where does this put Unanazoon on the evolutionary family tree?
Right at the base of the vertebrate lineage, between non-vertebrate chordates and other vertebrates. Think of it as a bridge between those early creatures with a notochord, that flexible rod supporting the body, and the vertebrates we see today.
Now, for those of us who need a quick refresher, what exactly are chordates, just to make sure we're all on the same page?
Sure, chordates are a diverse group of animals that all share some key features at some point in their development. One of those is the notochord, which we just mentioned, and vertebrates are just one branch of that big chordate family tree.
Okay, that makes sense. So Unanazoon helps us trace those very early beginnings of our own lineage, a glimpse into what those first vertebrates might have looked like.
Exactly. And here's another cool thing. Unanazoon has 7 pairs of pharyngeal arches.
Okay, and why is that significant?
Well, it supports a theory called the vertebrate pharyngeal arch homology theory. This theory basically suggests that these different pharyngeal arches in vertebrates evolved into the diverse structures we see today. Things like jaws, the hyoid arch, which supports the tongue, and gill arches in fish.
Oh, wow. So by studying Unanazoon, we can actually see those early stages of how these crucial structures developed.
That's the exciting part. It's like a window into the deep evolutionary past. But there is one thing about Unanozone's pharyngeal skeleton that's got scientists scratching their heads.
Oh, what's that?
It has this basket-like pharynx, which is typical of jawless vertebrates.
Well, wouldn't that be expected for an early vertebrate? What's so puzzling about it?
Well, it's different from the pharyngeal skeletons we see in more derived vertebrates, those with jaws. This suggests Unanozone's basket-like structure might actually represent the ancestral condition for all vertebrates.
So Unanozone is showing us features we'd expect in an early vertebrate, but also hinting at a different evolutionary path for the pharynx.
Exactly. It highlights the complexity of evolution, reminds us there's always more to learn. Each new discovery can challenge our understanding and open up new avenues of research.
It's incredible to think that such a tiny creature can hold so many clues about our own evolutionary history.
It really is. And it's a reminder that even the smallest discoveries can have a huge impact on our understanding of the past. It's true. Every new fossil can turn our understanding upside down. But sometimes those discoveries aren't about those tiny details or rewriting family trees. Sometimes it's about understanding how creatures lived and adapted to their world. And for that, we have to look at the big picture, like really big. As in the Indricothers, colossal mammals that dwarfed even elephants. There's been some really interesting research on them lately, all about their evolution and how they became giants.
Angiocotherians, yeah. They were like something straight out of fantasy, weren't they? To think those massive creatures actually roamed the earth, it's mind-boggling. How did they even get so big? What was their evolutionary journey like?
Well, we can break it down into three phases. First, you have the early days, the early Eocene. This is when you have the earliest Indricothers like Juxia, which was, well, relatively small. Think about the size of a wolf dog.
So humble beginnings, like most lineages. But then what happened? What made them start growing into these behemoths?
The planet started to cool down, leading to some big environmental shifts. Forests were giving way to more open, arid landscapes. And that environment favored larger herbivores, ones that could travel farther for food and water. So by the Middle Eocene, you have Forstercoperia, which was already clocking in at around 1.5 tons.
Okay, so from wolf dog size to like small car size in a few million years. That's pretty impressive. But they weren't done growing yet, were they?
Not at all. There was another big cooling event at the Eocene-Oligocene boundary. This actually led to the extinction of some Indricother species, like Ertnotherium. But the family was tough, they bounced back, continued to thrive and diversify, hitting their peak during the Oligocene.
And that's when we see the real giants emerge, right? Like Paraceratherium.
But bingo! Most Indricothers, they showed this steady increase in size over time, but Paraceratherium, it went through an explosive growth spurt, evolved into the largest land mammal to ever walk the earth.
I can't even imagine. How big are we talking?
Estimates suggest it could have weighed up to 20 tons. To put that in perspective, that's heavier than 4 African elephants combined.
It's almost hard to wrap your head around. And these weren't just lumbering around in one little area, were they? I remember reading they migrated across some pretty crazy landscapes.
Yeah, they were incredibly adaptable. We have fossil evidence suggesting they migrated across huge distances, even conquering the Tibetan Plateau. We're talking heights of 2,000 meters.
Wow, those massive creatures traversing those altitudes. It's wild. But like all good things, it couldn't last forever, right? What happened? What led to their decline?
Climate change, again. The late Oligocene saw continued environmental shifts. Their food sources probably became scarcer. And eventually, they just couldn't keep up. Their relatives, the rhinos, they evolved large body sizes later on, but they never reached the sheer scale of those Indricother ancestors.
Always a bit sad to think about these incredible creatures that aren't around anymore. They're fossils, though. They give us a glimpse into a world that's just, well, mind-blowing. Speaking of unique adaptations, you sent over some research on a creature that's a bit more, shall we say, familiar, the giant panda, and their interesting choice of diet. Bamboo. I gotta admit, it's always puzzled me how a bear ended up almost exclusively eating bamboo.
Well, it's a great example of specialization, right? Pandas have evolved all these unique features that let them not only survive, but thrive on this tough, fibrous plant. One of the best-known adaptations, of course, is their pseudothumb.
Ah, yes, the famous pseudo-thumb. It's not really a thumb, though, is it?
Not in the traditional sense, no.
Okay.
It's this enlarged wrist bone that acts like an opposable thumb, allows them to grab and manipulate bamboo, stripping leaves, holding stalks, even using it to bring bamboo shoots to their mouth.
Yep. Like a built-in tool, specifically for bamboo. I guess that comes in handy when you're dealing with such a, shall we say, challenging food source. But their teeth are also adapted for bamboo, right? It's not like your average bear is munching on bamboo shoots all day.
Right, you are. Their teeth are another key to their bamboo eating success. They've evolved these intricate cusps and ridges, perfect for crushing and grinding that tough bamboo. Compare them to other bear teeth, which are designed for a more varied diet. You can really see how specialized pandas have become.
It's amazing to think that millions of years of evolution have shaped them to exploit this one specific food source. But when did this bamboo obsession start? Is it a recent thing in their evolution, or does it go back further?
Well, that's where the fossil record comes in handy. We have evidence from an extinct panda, Ailuroarctos, lived back in the late Miocene, around 6 million years ago. And you know what? Ailuroarctos already had those specialized teeth for eating bamboo.
So they've been munching on bamboo for at least 6 million years. That's a long-term relationship. But here's a question that's been bugging me. If that pseudo-thumb is so crucial for their bamboo-eating lifestyle, why hasn't it evolved to be even bigger? Wouldn't a bigger thumb give them even more dexterity?
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But the pseudo-thumb, it's not just for bamboo. It also plays a vital role in supporting their weight when they walk.
Oh, I see. So a bigger thumb might make them clumsier, less efficient at getting around.
Exactly. They're still bears, after all. They got to be able to navigate their forest homes, climb trees, and even forage for other food items if bamboo is scarce.
Makes sense. So the pseudo-thumb, it's a compromise, right? Ideal size for both grabbing bamboo and staying mobile.
Yep, a perfect example of how evolution balances those competing demands. It's what allowed them to carve out their niche in those bamboo forests.
Well, our deep dive into the panda world has definitely given me a new appreciation for these unique bears and their interesting culinary choices.
It really is incredible how creatures adapt to their environments, isn't it? Sometimes those adaptations are physical, like the panda's thumb, and sometimes they're, well, a bit more behavioral. Speaking of which, you sent over some info about a fossil site in Germany that's being called a frog death trap. What's the story there?
Yeah, frog death trap definitely caught my attention. What makes this site so special?
It's an ancient swamp, and they've found hundreds of fossilized frogs there, all seemingly died around the same time.
Oh, wow. So some kind of mass extinction event, like the swamp dried up or something.
That's what scientists initially thought. Some catastrophic event, sudden drop in oxygen, maybe volcanic eruption, who knows. But get this, recent research on a couple of the frogs, totally different story.
Really? What did they find?
The frogs, they were perfectly healthy when they died. No signs of any environmental disaster. They weren't washed in from somewhere else. No indication the swamp dried up. And definitely not a predator attack.
Okay, so not a natural disaster, not a hungry predator picking them off. What else could it be? Sounds like a real prehistoric mystery.
Well, let's just say these frogs might have been a little too enthusiastic about their mating rituals.
Ah, okay. Frogs, mating, what happened?
You know how frogs typically mate in water?
Yeah, I've seen it. It's quite the sight.
Well, during mating, the male frog, he grabs the female from behind, holds her tight.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a gentle embrace.
Right, and sometimes that embrace, it can be a little too strong, can actually lead to, well, an unfortunate end for the female.
Wait, are you saying these frogs, they drown during mating? That's kind of sad, isn't it?
Seems that way. The urge to reproduce, it was so strong that those males, they just held on, even if it meant their partner couldn't surface for air. And it wasn't just a one-time thing either. Fossil evidence suggests it was pretty common in this swamp.
Wow. Talk about a romantic rendezvous gone wrong.
Mm.
So this fossil site, it's not just telling us about ancient frog populations. It's giving us a glimpse into their mating behavior millions of years ago, like a prehistoric soap opera playing out in the fossil record.
Exactly. Highlights that even in the prehistoric world, sometimes, well, love can be a killer. But hey, let's end on a lighter note, shall we? What about that unique grasshopper from Australia? Warramaba virgo.
Oh yeah, Warramaba virgo, the all-female grasshopper society. I mean, that's pretty unusual, right? I thought sexual reproduction, mixing genes from two parents was like essential for survival, for adaptability.
You're right, it usually is. Helps species adapt to those changing environments, keeps the gene pool fresh. But Warramaba virgo, it throws a wrench in that whole idea. They've been thriving in Australia for at least 250,000 years, all female, even expanded their range more successfully than their sexually reproducing ancestors.
250,000 years. That's incredible for a species that, in theory, should have less adaptability. How have they managed to pull that off? It's baffling.
It's a bit of an evolutionary puzzle, isn't it? Researchers think they might have benefited from something called hybrid vigor. Basically, the idea is that Warramaba virgo came about from a hybridization event between two other grasshopper species, and that mixing of genes, it might have given them a genetic edge.
So a lucky genetic cocktail. But that doesn't explain why they ditched sexual reproduction altogether. Why give up something that works for so many other species?
One theory is that parthenogenesis, reproducing without mating, allows them to, well, reproduce twice as fast. No need to waste time and energy finding mates. They can just focus on making more offspring.
It's like they streamlined the whole baby-making process. Makes sense from an efficiency standpoint, I guess. But if it's so successful, why don't we see it more often?
Good question. Evolutionary biologists are still working on that one. Parthenogenesis is pretty rare in the animal kingdom. One thought is that offspring from those hybrid species, like Warramaba virgo, they often have trouble developing properly. So maybe there's a trade-off, right? Benefits of parthenogenesis versus the risks of those hybrid offspring.
So maybe Warmava Virgo just hit the genetic jackpot, both with its hybrid origins and the whole no males needed thing. It really goes to show evolution is full of surprises, isn't it?
Absolutely. Every fossil, every weird adaptation, every unusual reproductive strategy, it adds another layer to that story of life.
Well, on that note, it's time to wrap up our deep dive. We've journeyed from the time of giant dinosaurs, met the possible ancestor of all creatures with spines, and pondered the mysteries of panda thumbs and amorous frogs. What a ride.
It's amazing to think about all the incredible creatures that have walked this earth and all the secrets they still hold.
It's a reminder that the past is full of wonder and mystery, connections to the present that we're only just beginning to understand. So keep those questions coming, keep exploring, keep being curious about the incredible diversity of life, past and present.
Until next time, happy digging.